We play and call it work.
Hey folks, Janene from MiniWarGaming here with another how-to video for you. In this video, we're going to continue painting this purple worm from Gale Force 9. And now that we have the purple on the top of the worm, we are going to paint a nice rich brown on the underbelly and on these scales that run down the back and the sides. As always, if you have suggestions for something you want to see in a future how-to video, please leave it down below in the comments. The first step is going to be to paint everything with a layer of Morphing Brown mixed with a little bit of Lamian Medium. And we're just going to apply this as an all-over layer on this whole underbelly section. It's got a lot of deep cracks where all of the scales kind of fold into each other. So we want to make sure that we get it into all of the little nooks and crannies in there so it's a nice solid coat. We're also going to get all of this area under the chin all the way up to these large spikes, and the large spikes on the bottom of this jawline are also going to be this dark brown, so we need to make sure that we get that whole area. We're also going to paint these lines of spiky scales that go along both of the sides and then down the center of the back. We're going to get the entire scale all the way up to the sculpted line where it starts to protrude from the purple on the back. Here's the worm after we've gotten a nice solid coat of that Morphing Brown. The next color we're going to work with is going to be XV88. We're not going to add any Lamian Medium to this color because we are going to apply it as a heavy dry brush over all of the Morphing Brown. Now, because this is sculpted with such defined sharp lines, it's really going to help us lighten up the whole belly section while still leaving that darker brown in all of the recesses. Now I'm just using a very soft brush. I've got very little paint on my brush and I'm just applying this in very slow, controlled layers so that I can get a really nice even coverage without having it be too streaky or anything like that. When I switch to these scales on the side and the back, I'm going to use a much smaller dry brush so I have a lot more control and I'm not going to slop over onto anything that I've already painted. And you can see as we bring the mini up close that having that dry brush has really started to bring out some of the texture that was sculpted into this underbelly section. After our XV88 dry brush, we are going to reinforce some of our shadows, and we are going to use Rakelin Flesh Shade in some of these crevices. I picked Rakelin Flesh Shade because as a shade, it's dark, but it's still got a lot of really warm, bright hues to it. And even though I'm painting the underbelly to be brown, I still want it to be a really saturated brown so that it doesn't completely fade away when it's next to the really bright purple on the back. I'm not using a lot of this color, I'm really just kind of using it to line all of the scales on this belly. And then as we move up to this area right underneath the jaw, there's a little bit of a line that kind of goes down the center, and I want to exaggerate that a little bit. So I'm going to apply some of this shade along the lower areas so that the area that's sculpted to be a little bit further out is exaggerated. And I'm also just going to use a little bit of this along all of the transitions between the purple and the scales on the side and down the center. Here's the worm after we've applied the Rakelin Flesh Shade. We're going to add one final shade before we start adding some highlights. We're going to use the color Ruigi Violet. And I'm just going to apply it in this gap here between the round scales on the belly and where they transition up into the scales that come out of the worm. I just feel like this area would be in a little bit more shadow, and I kind of want to put in a little bit of purple so that it blends in with all of the purple on the back as well. I'm going to apply some of this color along the jawline as well. And I'm adding just a little bit along this throat ridge to make it stand out even more. Here's the worm after we've applied that Ruigi Violet shade. Now that we've got a really nice base, we're going to start adding some highlights to kind of make these scales really pop and be a lot more vibrant. The first color we're going to use is going to be Baylor Brown. And we're going to mix just a little bit of Lamy Medium into it as well. Now I'm going to use this color to do a heavy line highlight on all of the hard edges of the plates and the scales of the belly. So I'm just going to run it along all of these edges, and since we added all of that shadow into the gaps between all of these plates, having that highlight right there is really going to make a lot of contrast and make this area pop, even though it's kind of a more subtle color when compared to the purple. Want to make sure that I get all of the scales that run down the center of the underbelly. And I'm also going to line all of these scales that go down the back as well. Here's the worm after that Baylor Brown highlight. It's gone from being a little bit flat to really starting to pop. The last step is to add a super highlight, and we are going to use just a touch of Ushopti bone. Again, we're mixing this with Lamy Medium so that it's got a nice flow and it's not so thick. And I really just want to use this color very sparingly. I'm only going to catch the tips of these scales, really accentuating the point. And then I'm going to pick a few areas of the underbelly that are going to be in a little bit more sun because of the way that the worm has twisted. And because of that twist to the worm on this side, we're actually not even going to catch all of these scales coming down. We're only going to get a few until the worm turns to the point where the scales are so much in shadow that they wouldn't have that heavy Ushopti bone highlight. And here is the underbelly of the worm complete. Give it a little bit of a twirl so you can see it over all of the mini. Sticking to a very yellowy brown really complements the purple very well without overwhelming it in any way. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see more how-to videos, I have another one where I'm going to go through and paint all of the teeth on this worm in the MiniWarGaming Vault in the link down below in the description. If you don't already have a Vault membership, go ahead and click the link. You can start a 7-day free trial and get access to my video and hundreds of other videos in the MiniWarGaming Vault. So go ahead, click the link, start your free trial, and happy wargaming!